Welcome, everyone, back to Talking Ball. Once again, we want to thank Coach Patrick Murphy, the Alabama softball coach, for joining us today. It was an honor to have him on to preview the matchup with Oklahoma and talk about the journey his team's been on. And now to take a further look at Alabama softball and the conference as a whole, I think the person that covers softball the best in the SEC in the media, he does such a great job for the university covering especially Alabama, and we're honored to be joined for the first time by Tommy Dees. Tommy, how are you?
Doing fine. How are you?
Doing really well, Tommy. And I know you've been very close to this softball program in Alabama and followed it and covered it for many years now. And it's been just amazing, the growth of the program and the growth in popularity and what Coach Murphy has built at Alabama. And you don't want to take it for granted, but you just sort of expect them with what he's built to be doing this every year. But it's still an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depending on what your measurables are, you can argue that Alabama is the top program in the country consistently over the last 10 years or more, because they do have a national championship, and they have been in the super regionals 11 for 11, the 11 years it's had a super regional format in softball where you play a best of three among the final 16 teams to decide the 8 going to series. Alabama is the only team in the country that's played in all 11 super regionals, and they're a regular attendee at the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City. They won it in 2012. They were runner-up last year. They've been quarterfinals, Final Four, semifinalist, I think 3 other times, something like that. So yes, it's one of the best programs in the country. And then on top of that, they lead the nation in attendance every year now.
Mm-hmm.
And have for several years.
Oh, yeah, 11 years in a row. That's amazing. And it's just amazing at the facility and the way it's grown. They started out playing at a public park, and now they have Road Stadium that they continue to improve. And it's as nice as any in softball. Coach Murphy has done a great job of raising funds and improving that facility. And now, as we talked to him earlier, it's amazing now they recruit nationally, and they're able to attract great players like Charlotte Morgan, Alexis Osorio from the state of California, Caleb Breaux from Eugene, Oregon. It's just been and also to sprinkle in the great players in the state like Haley McClaney and Danae Hayes. It's been a great balance, and it's great to see Alabama the program become a national brand in softball.
Absolutely, yeah, and it started more local and regional, and because of the reputation they built, because of the coaching staff and the consistency, and of course the facilities and the other things, they have been able to attract what you might call national recruits, and they've done that consistently over the years, but not as much on the West until more recently. They got Stephanie Van Brakel from up in Pennsylvania, Kathy Bosher from New York, so kind of the eastern half of the country, they were doing a really good job, and especially the southeast, of attracting the very top recruits. But it was harder for them, the kids from California and Washington and Oregon and places like that. And they've begun to make inroads in those areas, and not just to get leftovers either. I think that's a big thing. And they've also done well in the past in Florida and Texas. But a lot of programs are kind of built, or were early in the SEC days, on what I would call California Pac-12 or Pac-10 at that time, leftovers. That conference would kind of get their pick of what they wanted from the West Coast, which at that time was considered the best softball and the best breeding ground for prospects. And then your other programs would kind of come in and take what was left. Alexis Osorio is not a leftover. She is
no doubt
arguably the top pitching freshman in the country, certainly one of them, and everybody wanted her.
They really did, and I know you've seen the program. You've seen Van Brakel. You've seen Jackie Trena. You've seen the impact they made as young pitchers. It's hard to compare, but how would you compare Osorio to her predecessors?
She's as good as any ace they've had come in on the freshman end. A lot of the others, you had a situation where, like with a Trena, where they came in their freshman year, they weren't the ace.
Right.
They were the B. They had kind of had a year to understudy. It's like, being an ace, and it's no different than baseball. If you're the Friday night starter in the SEC in baseball, boy, you better produce. And the same thing in softball. If you're the Friday starter, which in softball, because the the stress on the arm is much different and much lesser, really. If you're doing it right, your Friday starter is often your Sunday starter, so you're getting two a weekend. And I think Alexis had a little growing pains in that she had a couple of outings where maybe she squeezed a little bit by the ump and didn't react as well as she would like to have. I'd say she's had two bad outings this year. Other than that, all of her losses are like two. So it's not her that's getting beat or 1-0 kind of things. And sometimes that's an unearned run. So while she's officially the loser on the card, she's pitched well enough to win and didn't get run support a few times. So but she's been outstanding, and if you project what she can be if she stays healthy, wow. I was having a discussion with Graham Hayes of ESPN.com, who's the premier authority, I think, among journalists on college softball. And the question is that she's the pitcher in the country right now. And the only one that probably might can claim that title besides her is Sheridan Hawkins, who's an upperclassman at Oregon, who's got World Series experience. But as far as who's pitching the best right now, it's those two and everybody else.
That's great stuff. I agree. I think she's been nails the second half of the season, no doubt about it, after being brought along slowly. And now the lineup, after a slow start by Lafayette, she and Jaden Spencer, they seem to be getting offense from up and down the order, and that's big for Coach Murphy, and they seem locked in the regional.
Yeah, and one of the things, talking to Patrick Murphy, looking at them early in the season, first of all, they had to sort out the top of the lineup. Haley McClain lead off last year. She started as the leadoff. As good as she is in that role, I think it's a little bit of a waste of her talent, although she can slap and bunt and do all those things. When her only job was to get on base, you're leaving RBIs if somebody else can say for her. And lately they moved her to 3, then the 2, so she's in the 2 hole, and she's a very, very productive power hitter. And she can, and if she comes somebody on base that needs to get on base, she can use her other skills to do that. So she's a 5-tool player all around. So that part had to get sorted out. And then, as you mentioned, the 4, 5, 6, the power part of the lineup had to get more productive. But when Alabama schools, winning 2 out of 3 in some series, but maybe they could have swept in the year. A lot of it was, you'd set the plate and you'd leave them there because especially the right-handed power hitters were not producing. And lately they have been. And right now, I can tell you this. I've covered Alabama softball from the very beginning. I've covered every season, from the first game. And New Patrick as an assistant and as a head coach. Patrick Murphy's teams always get better late in the season.
They really do.
Last year, they were runner-up in the nation. If you'd have asked me in March if Alabama could be one of the final 2 teams standing, I would say absolutely not. They were not good enough at that time. But they kept getting better. It peaked at the right time. And Florida was the best team, and Florida was going to win it. And Alabama was probably the only team that might have had a chance to knock them off, but Alabama got to the championship game because Patrick Murphy's teams always get better.
They do, it's always a mark of his program that seniors tend to have their best year in their final campaign. And Danae Hayes has done that. She's gotten progressively better as a hitter. And Chauncey Bell, she waited her turn. She's had a really good year. And obviously Jaden Spencer has really picked it up the second half of the year. We talked about her. And even with the big pinch hit, Richard, she's done a nice job.
Yeah, and that you may very well see Danielle Richards, and this is not an Alabama team that has he's had times when he's had 15 or 16 who could hit, and then it's a matter of picking the right ones and changing your lineup here and there. This year he's got all batters because none of the pitchers hit, and Peyton Grantham tore up her knee in the spring and in the fall and had surgery, so she wasn't available. They got hitters, and so his lineup's been more consistent. And I think in the long run it's kind of helped. But Danielle Richards Richard is one who's in the lineup sometimes, not in the lineup sometimes. Kind of a little bit of a rotation in left field. And being that Oklahoma's ace is a left-handed pitcher and the other option in left field is a left-handed bat, I wouldn't be surprised if Danielle Richards ended up starting there this week, or certainly she would be, again, a good pinch hitter. option because you like that righty-lefty matchup, and you don't want to have a completely left-handed lineup against a left-handed pitcher.
Without a doubt. And what are your thoughts overall on the matchup with Oklahoma? Obviously, Chamberlain is a great hitter, leads the nation in home runs, and they have a talented pitching staff. But what do you think is going to be the key for Alabama?
Keeping the ball in the park. Between Lauren Chamberlain, just for people that might not keep up, is the all-time home run queen in college softball. And,
amazing.
That's 92, I think, right now.
Wow.
Okay, she's number 1 on the all-time list. Shelby Finley is number 6 on the all-time list. So they got 2 seniors who count for, 1/3 of the top 6 home run hitters of all time in college softball. And that's not happening against the Mickey Mouse schedule either.
No.
Oklahoma's, a national program. They play in a major conference. I mean, that's not some kid from, no offense, North Dakota hitting a bunch of home runs against, less than stellar pitching. They can hit anybody, especially Chamberlain. So Alexis Osorio's got to be very careful. What she can't do is walk people, so that if they do get home runs, they need to be solo home runs. And she needs the ball in the park. That's the challenge is Oklahoma's back. And it's not just those 2. But between those 2, they've got like 45 home runs. That's more than some staff. And that's just 2 batters, and there's other hitters there. The other thing is I think Alabama it's important for Alabama, especially at home, to execute small ball, to try to lead and try to set the plate, and then people have got to knock them in. But I think if I had to narrow it down to 2 or 3 things, it would be on the pitching end and defense, limit walks, free bases, and keep the ball in the park. And on the offensive end, I think the small ball game would be really important. They need to manufacture runs and let the home runs come if they happen. If Alabama's taking big hacks all day, hoping to win the game with a 3-run homer, that's probably as many home runs as they hit in the regional. That's probably not the best approach.
Agreed. And now, as far as the conference, Tommy, you've seen everyone in the league. You've covered the league as closely as anyone, and in following Alabama. Is this the best the conference has been, top to bottom?
Yeah, it is. I mean, 11 teams in the NCAA tournament, and only 8 of the final 16 are in the super regionals.
Amazing.
So of the 16 teams still left standing, 8 are from the SEC. And they can't all advance because 2 of them are playing other. Florida is hosting Kentucky. But, across the board, deep. Alabama finished 3rd, and that's a good finish in this SEC. Florida's been number 1 off and on all year. Auburn's been very, very good. LSU spent quite a bit of time at number 1 and then kind of tailed off a little at the end of the season, but was able to pull it out in the region. So, the SEC tournament is more competitive than any NCAA regional. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Coach Murphy was marveling at how 7 teams could make it to Oklahoma City. Realistically, in your mind, based upon the matchups, how many do you see advancing?
Well, Alabama and Oklahoma is quite frankly a toss-up, and there's that comes down to Oklahoma's RPI was like 13th, seeded 11th, but they're ranked 5th and 6th in the 2 polls. And Alabama is ranked 5th and 6th, so you couldn't get much more of a toss-up. I think Missouri's got a real chance at UCLA. I would probably favor UCLA at home, but I think Missouri's got a good chance. I think Alabama's got a real good chance, but again, it's a toss-up. I would favor Michigan over Georgia at home. Florida or Kentucky, one will go, but I would think it will be Florida. I think Tennessee will beat Florida State. I think LSU will beat Arizona, although that's going to be an interesting regional. And Auburn and Lafayette is a toss-up because the over-under on those games should be like 14 or maybe 18 and a half if you want to not have a push, because those are 2 of the most explosive run-hitting power offenses in the country. And ULL's probably got a little in pitching, but neither of those teams have what you would call a real ace, World Series levels that's going to shut the other team down completely. Now, you know how that goes. You talk all that, and then you end up with 2 1-0 games. But if you had to bet, you're going to see some football scores in Auburn this weekend.
Yeah, that would not be a surprise at all, Tommy. And I know you've seen this team. You talked about how much better they've gotten this year with Coach, and that is the trademark of Coach Murphy's teams at Alabama. Is this team, in your mind, can they win a national championship?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'd favor them to win the national championship. They haven't been as consistent as they would probably like, but the way they've been playing lately, they're as good as anybody. In a one, and how do you win a championship? One game at a time. In a one-game scenario, I think Alabama can beat anybody out there. And with Alettis Osorio, if they can, keep on the winning side of a bracket where you have to, fight through a loser's bracket, and I'm talking about if they get to the World Series, I like them head-to-head, one-on-one against anybody that certainly got as good a chance as the other team. So could this team win a national title? Yes, but what's really exciting if you're an Alabama softball fan is you got a freshman pitcher who should only get better, and you've got some other players that are going to grow into roles. So I think Alabama should be established. Next year, I think Alabama will be my favorites to win it from start to finish.
No doubt. And talk about the future a little bit, Tommy. I know you follow the program very closely. He always seems to have impact freshmen like Osorio and like Demi Turner. Who are some of the young talent that's coming into the program next year?
Well, I don't have the list of signees coming. One of them is a left-handed pitcher from Winfield, who's missed softball Alabama.
Yeah, Maddie Moore.
Might have been a missed softball this year, but she had to go knee surgery, so she only played going into the regional. She had only played in 8 games, but she's going to be really, really good. And it gives you a different look. It also helps you when you play other left-handed pitchers that you got somebody throw beat. But again, I don't have all their signees in front of them. I know that once again it's going to be a ranked recruiting class. The thing that's interesting is you get Peyton Grantham back. She was probably going to play third base this year. And she's a good right-handed power hitter, so that's another right-handed power bat. And possibly could be a catcher, but there's a few key components that will have to be replaced. Shortstop being a key one. Defense. Danae Hayes has range like nobody else, I think, in the country.
Yes.
And her bat has been very, very good lately, especially power numbers. So, that's one of the key things to look at replacing there. Jaden Spencer's been a really good player throughout her career, but they've got other fielders, so I think they're okay there. Catcher will be a key, and who's going to be playing behind the plate there.
Great stuff, Tommy. Well, we really appreciate you for joining us. We hope to have you as a regular contributor on Talking Ball. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff on Twitter and then where they can read your work.
Yeah, at Tommy Dees, that's DEAS on Twitter, and TideSports.com is our website, or TuscaloosaNews.com.
Well, thank you, Tommy. Really appreciate it, man. We really enjoyed it.
All right, you take care.
Yes, Tommy Dees with great insight into the Alabama and SEC softball.